Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through stories about DOGE. We have two in particular, one from the Dispatch, a right-wing outlet, one from the New Republic, a left-wing outlet that describes what the process has been like, what they'll actually have powers to do, and also describing how Ramaswamy found his way out. I know that Elon's been in a lot of controversy over the last few days, but I want to focus on this one because I feel as though there's actually material changes coming to the government here that can actually be interesting to talk about rather than some of the drama or speculation about where he leans and blah, 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 blah. So with that, we'll also end today with our daily delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. But that's enough rambling for me. Let's jump into our daily debate. So, do you think that a agency that was branded as a budget slasher and is now having a different picture form in reality, more of a efficiency on the technology side, efficiency on hiring side, do you think that DOGE so far has lived up to what it was claimed to be? And we'll describe and go through maybe some of the other reasons that it's not, because in my opinion, there are certain things it's not living up to, and why that is interesting to say the least. But I want to know your opinions. Throw it down there in the comment section. And with that, let's jump into our first article that comes from, like I said, the Dispatch. The headline reads, "Clever Trump Executive Order Shrouds DOGE from Public Scrutiny." So this was one of the huge, just the headline itself, we can go over what it implies. This was a big part of the question of whether or not the DOGE, how should I say, committee, the DOGE external agency, as it was first proposed, whether or not it would be able to actually keep its conversations with the White House secret. There was talk of possibly making it a 501c3, a 501c4, or having it be an outside organization, but one that still communicates regularly with the president and the executive office. But when you do something like that, as this article details beautifully, if you want more of the inside information, you have to actually disclose basically everything. A Freedom of Information Act can actually go in and say, oh, all these communications between the public, a public organization, and the president should be available to the citizens. And when you're talking about slashing millions of jobs, when you're talking about implementing plans that are intricate and possibly could take a long time to enact, you could probably have some of your ideas undercut because the information is publicly accessible. People in those bureaucracies, in those different regulatory agencies, might try to find ways to push back against it, or even prepare by putting through heavy regulation that obviously comes down from the executive, but maybe they sprinkle in their own touch. Maybe there's a little bit of rebellion on top of the fact that maybe the DOGE is especially between Elon, Vivek, as it was proposed, and Trump, having it between all of them, those communications may not be the most savory things. They may not want all of those conversations out there. So they actually found a way around this, which was in order to change one of the existing executive agencies, one of the existing in-house branches that was created in 2016 by Obama, into something that could be tooled to serve some of DOGE's purposes. So I want to go to the third paragraph here, where the quote says, quote, "The move was legal, but not to mention strategically impressive. Some lawyers with government experience told the Dispatch because the U.S. Digital Services was born of the executive branch, not created by a congressional statute. The U.S. Digital Service was launched in 2016 under President Obama to help modernize government information technology and improve taxpayers' experiences with that tech." Quote, "Also impressive to those lawyers was declaring DOGE a temporary organization scheduled to sunset in July 2026, which allows it to hire individuals for any length of time and compensate Trump and Musk prefer for the compensation that they prefer." And this is, and we'll end the quote there, this is trying to get around the fact that if you have a agency and you're trying to hire people, you normally have to pay them fair market wages for their time and their effort. So basically, there's a cap on most federal positions that you can't earn too much. And if you're coming in as an advisor, say Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy wants to bring in one of their friends, they want to bring in an executive from a different company. Well, that executive, their time is very valuable, at least to them. They're getting paid lots of money in other places. So they would look at a possible compensation package for advising on how to make things more efficient in the government. And they would say, oh, that's not a lot of money. My time could be spent that exact same 3 hours that you're asking me a week to do this. I could be a member of a board and then make triple that money, because people that are members of board, even though they have big obligations and they have lots of ideas to go through, very often the time is, however much time they put into it, is normally nowhere more than 10 hours during a week. And normally that would be towards times where there are more board meetings happening. Then again, some boards are more active than others. But the point being that they, for very little time, they could still make more money doing something else. So this allows Elon Musk and Trump to set budgets at a much higher level, to set compensation for these advisory roles at a much higher level, which therefore can be enticing to business executives, which, let's be clear, it also means that they can give outrageous amounts of money to Elon Musk himself for all the time he'll be spending here. But this is something, the large increase in budget. When you first read this, you would say to yourself, but isn't that antithetical to what DOGE was supposed to do? DOGE was supposed to be a agency that is going to cut the federal budget by 2 trillion. There were talks of more than that, and there's talks of less of that, maybe 1 trillion. The point being that it was a fundamental idea that they're trying to limit the amount of dollars the U.S. is going to spend. We're going to be more efficient with our money, so streamlining processes, removing extra layers of bureaucrats, things of this nature allow for the process to be more streamlined and therefore be efficient, which would fall in line with the name of Department of Government Efficiency. But there seems to be a different picture now that Ramaswamy is out. And this was Ramaswamy's child. This was Vivek Ramaswamy's child. Throughout the entire campaign, he literally proposed something in order to cut the workforce in half, in order to make sure we're not spending as much money on them. And he said it was every other, or every odd, or every even social security number. It's completely random. There's no bias there. It's literally just a process of firing people outright. He was always the one pushing for this more heavily. Elon Musk obviously wanted to have some sort of efficiency in the government, but remember, and I'm not saying that this is 100% what it is, but remember where Vivek Ramaswamy's incentives are, and remember where Elon Musk's incentives are. Currently, pharma is an industry that is very, very controlled by the U.S. government. They get lots of subsidies from the U.S. government. And when he's making a biopharmaceutical company that he was able to make successful, that he's out of now for the most part, he still reaps some of the benefits. He wants to make sure that the current regulatory scheme does not hamper him, and he wants to make sure that the government doesn't necessarily get in his way. He's not necessarily getting all that funding directly from the government, though he did get money in grants from the government. A lot more of money in grants went to the normal pharmaceutical companies, and his idea is, okay, I want to make sure that we can limit the amount of regulations out there, that we can limit the bureaucracy. So, and this is deeply cynical, but remember, these are the bases of which these people are coming from. He's coming from that perspective, operating in that world. Vivek would say, okay, let's cut down on all of this, make sure that that money flowing out doesn't necessarily go to those companies. They don't get as much of an advantage from the U.S. government, or at least a more fair shake with biodiversity or pharmaceutical companies, then Elon Musk, who's a lot of his money, a lot of his contracts for SpaceX, a lot of even the subsidies for Tesla, and the traffic from X is heavily based on politics nowadays. But the point being that his incentives are layered differently. He doesn't necessarily want the government, he wants the government to be more efficient and to free up more money. He doesn't necessarily want to cut everything, because they are actively, basically, in Vivek's situation, if you were to compare it to the Vivek's situation, he is the big pharmaceutical companies. He is the big tech guy that's getting lots of money in grants from the government. So he doesn't necessarily want that gravy train to end. So instead of just haphazardly cutting the money out and trying to limit it altogether, what he's doing is trying to streamline some processes, possibly fire some people, but it's not going to be as large of an overhaul, because he wants to make sure that the money keeps flowing towards him. That is deeply cynical. That is very deeply cynical. But it seems to line up with how what the new vision of this organization is. And this is something that I was not surprised when I heard this at all, but it is hilarious to me that this, idea was born of Vivek and Elon, and it was kind of shepherded through by both of them in the public and the media, and they're both were the public faces of it. And then when Trump was going through the process and Musk was pushing to get Vivek out, Vivek basically said goodbye. Then again, he is running for office in 2026 as to be the governor of Ohio, so fair enough. He has a way forward that doesn't necessarily lead to shame. He still can move forward and upward, but it just is hilarious that, hey, you guys are the public faces. A month later, well, you know what? We're just going to leave it to Elon. So here's the quote that I was talking about. Quote, meanwhile, there was no mention of cost cutting in the executive order Trump signed Monday to formalize the Department of Government Efficiency, signaling the president and Musk must be jet-setting one of the original goals of the effort, which was to slash government spending by as much as $2 trillion. Rather, DOGE now appears to focus on modernizing information technology and infrastructure, end quote. And that does line up with Mr. Musk's experience, especially with how he came into Twitter and was able to streamline some things. Is it the most profitable company? No, it's still in the red, but he was still able to cut down on a lot of their expenditures. Now, on the profit side, did he make it back up? That's an interesting question, but also when you're the federal government, you don't necessarily have to worry about profits. You really do have to worry about expenditures, though, and I'm mainly joking there, but the point being, it will be interesting to see what he does with this new position, especially now that he's shielded from any Freedom of Information Acts, and he is basically in the executive office and can get whatever compensation he wants. It'll be interesting. So let's jump to our second article. It will be very brief. I just want to pull one or two quotes from here. It's from the New Republic, and the headline reads, "The reason Elon Musk forced Vivek Ramaswamy out of DOGE." Quote, "While it seems like a pivot from creating a brand new agency, this change is far more aligned with Musk's technology-forward vision for the organization. It also lands him a White House office and all the unfettered access that entails." Quote, "The executive order gave Musk full and prompt access to all unclassified agency records, system softwares, and IT systems, a privilege that will likely benefit the billionaire technocrat who has already made tens of billions of dollars in government contracts. Musk also imagined DOGE being structured as a small team within the government, not a non-government body structure Ramaswamy imagined. Because it's a White House office, Musk will also be able to sidestep federal hiring rules and Trump's hiring freezes." And those are all important addendums. Those are all important things that needed to be considered. And this is most likely, this combination of things is most likely why Vivek Ramaswamy is out. Their visions did not align. He saw on the horizon that he had a chance of going and becoming governor in Ohio, and he was probably pushed out a little bit, and then he said, well, you know, if you guys are going to push me out, I'm going to leave on my own terms. And Musk is seeming to get his way here, probably because he is less, I don't want to say less intense, but his vision is much simpler to implement rather than large cutting across everything, especially when you're going into a presidency of a man who didn't actually cut the budget. He actually spent more money during his first term. And even if you exclude COVID, he spent a lot of money, more than actually cutting the amount of money that we spent. And let's be clear, Congress has a part to play in that. It's not just he raised the deficit. They all contributed during his first term to the raising of the deficit. So to pretend as though he is a man that is so fiscally responsible and he wants to cut. No, he's a man that's willing to spend in order to get what he wants and is hoping that we can actually create the pressures for the U.S. economy to grow and not shrink. So therefore, we can actually make up for those losses, because the main thing that we're worried about is debt to GDP. So if you can't actually decrease the debt, you have to make sure that the GDP is growing faster than the debt in order to slowly shrink that gap. That's the theory. It's betting on the future. It's something that it's kind of modern monetary theory, not really modern monetary theory, because that's borrowing against yourself and promising on the future. But the point being that it does have some ideas behind it, which is we're betting on the future being good, which we can't always do. But this man, Donald Trump, is not someone who necessarily wants to cut. He talks about it. He was slowly cutting regulations, but when he came down to what he was actually backing and pushing through, he was a person willing to put more money into his projects. And if that led to a higher debt, a higher deficit, then that's just the reality of the case. So I think that it makes sense that Ramaswamy's vision didn't necessarily line up with Trump's or especially Elon's. But hey, with that said, we gave you a little bit of details about Doge. We gave you the back and forth. We gave you the reasons that Vivek Ramaswamy is out, what Elon Musk will be able to do with it, and what this executive order, what protections it provides. But there's always more information that I can't necessarily get to in this quick podcast that we're throwing up every other day. So if you want to read any of the articles, all the links will be in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine. So if you want to download it, just listen to it there. You can do that on a daily basis. It comes out at the exact same time. And if you want to listen to the international news segment, it's 6 in 6. That's what it's called. It's 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. You can come back to this YouTube channel, or you can also go to the RSS feed. So with that said, I wanted to get all that promotion stuff out of the way before we get to our daily delight. So this is meant to leave a little smile on your face. This one comes from Animals Around the Globe, and the headline reads, "Cat takes its job too seriously." And the article is a little bit long because it does actually detail how you train a cat, how cats are protective. But the essence of the story is that a cat was trying to establish boundaries in order to protect a child from possibly hurting itself from leaving too far away. And in order to actually stop the child, or at least go and see what's going on with the child, when the child crosses an imaginary boundary that they had trained it to observe, it actually ended up knocking over the child. And it is a really good, cute video. And also some of the details in there are interesting, especially if you're cat lovers. I am allergic to cats, so not the biggest cat lover in the world, but I can't deny that sometimes they do things that are absolutely hilarious and adorable. So with that said, if you want to check out the entire article for yourself, same deal applies. It will be linked in the description below the like and subscribe button. I already gave all the other self-promotion stuff, so from there I'm not going to overdo it. With all of that said, there is only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.